name is Yuki. I am the community builder of Solvay Brussels School Vietnam. And thank you for being here today with us with BizTalk on key success factors for growing startups with Professor 𝐼𝐴 and Mr. Hong. So we will get to know Professor 𝐼𝐴 and Mr. Hong in a few minutes. And after that, we will have a chance to listen to the sharing and stories, and also you can interact with us. Please put your questions and comments in the chat box, so we will check it very often, and we can interact during the session. Is that okay for everyone? Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor 𝐼𝐴 and anh Hong, for being here today. So let's start. Let's start with 𝐼𝐴. Hello, Harold.
Hello, Yuki.
Yes, how are you?
Happy to be with you here from Vietnam.
Very good. So could you please introduce about yourself? And I'm sure that other students and friends are also curious to know why you choose to live in Vietnam, why you are in Vietnam now. So could you tell us more about yourself?
Maybe first a little bit of introduction why I accepted your invitation to talk to share with all of you my experience in startup. It's a bit, it's all about experience, right? Developing a startup successfully is clearly not a science. And what I want to share, if I can today, is simply experience. And this experience I can share comes from different levels. The first level is that I started 3 companies, startup. We can take time later to define what is a startup, what is a company. It has been a fantastic experience. The last one, we sold it 1 year ago. To a large American company. It's called 𝐷𝗐𝐻 IP. So 27 years in creating companies and managing companies give me some experience that I'm happy to share. The second thing I do to have experience to share, and I really love it, is mentoring. So I'm lucky enough to have some startups who ask me for some informal advice, and I really love doing it. Taking coffee, if possible, offline in a coffee, not online, but if you need any assistance online, I will do it as well. The third one, and you know it very well, Yuki, I've been teaching for the Solvay Business School in Vietnam for the last, since 2010. And the topic I'm teaching is from business planning to financial money. And that is a typical topic that speaks a lot to people who want to develop a startup, either externally or internally within their companies. And then the last one is that I've been fortunate to invest in a few successful startups, and by being a board member, I could get a lot of experience from them. So that is where I get some experience. Again, we will see that there is much to do also with the context in which you're developing your startup before being successful. I'm sorry, Yuki, not to know where you are, all 36 participants so far. Who are you in terms of startup? If we had time, I would love to know whether you are yourself startup, or you are planning to have a startup, or you have a project within your company. That would also be very interesting to discuss in that direction. And then you asked me a very personal question, Yuki, is why am I now in Vietnam? It's not only because I've been teaching here, coming twice a year to teach in Vietnam for the last 12 years. It's not only because I lived in Saigon from 1994 to 1997, but it's also because I fell in love with my wife, and then we have 4 wonderful children here in Saigon.
Very good. Different story.
Very nice. And And I also think maybe it could be nice after the introduction of Mr. Hùng, maybe we can ask a few of our participants to share why they are here and what they expect. So maybe we can make the talk more interactive and more cozy. Yeah.
Me, my turn. Yuki?
Yes, yes, anh Hùng. Hi, anh Hùng.
Okay. Hi, Yuki. Hi, everybody. Especially our classmate. I used to be a student of Solvay some years ago as well. Thanks, Yuki, for the invitation that we have a talk today so that we are able to exchange, able to share the failure, the successful, the experience, how we start up and running the business as well. A little bit about me. Actually, I tried startup right when I entered the university by opening the coffee shop with the vision at that time to try to make some money, right? So go to school, and I started up and then run it for some year. Also go to the school. Then after graduate from the school, then I start my career. We sold over the coffee, and then I start up I enter the corporate world, gone to different kind of company, multinational company, from the field of supply chain logistic management to the software, to the financial institute, credit rating agency, and also to the facility management and catering service company. And along the way, with the corporate world, in which the way I lucky that I got to different company, and most of the time I take over the situation and try to turn it around. So the spirit of entrepreneurial of startup also is it a lot of that, because you need to rebuild, you need to provide, you need to build up the business case, and you have different stakeholders to convince them, and how you build revamp the product, how you build the market, how you do a lot of things. Beside that, along the way, I also try to start up something relating to the consultant training, and also express courier company. And recently we built up something, and then focusing on B2B, and the progress is quite well as well. Those kind of experience of product is not the road never full of rose, rose flower. Startup, you need a lot of things, but of course that the outcome will be very inspiring when you see it's grow, when you see it's successful. So I hope that today we are very happy as well. We on a chain together, and then we can learn each other, so that every people have something and really to build for the future. Nice to meet every people.
And one of the questions that I like a lot to ask myself, or that I like a lot people to ask themselves, is if the product ID or the service ID I have, if it was free of charge, would people use it? Would people buy it? I think that's a quite simple question, but I would often start like that, just as a safety precaution, to be sure that I'm not thinking too loud and trying to create a team and trying to get money for something that would basically be very smart, but absolutely useless. And I'm talking here about experience, because often you can have ideas that look very smart and that at some point have common sense. But for some market reason, they don't make sense. And I had it in my second startup. When we started the company, we had one business idea. We thought it would work, But then we realized after 3 months that the market had changed. It was changing quite fast, and that we would have 0 customers for our brilliant idea. So first question, if it was free, would you have users? That's one of the things I like a lot. Of course, a second element, super important, is a little bit wider. Is there a market for my product or my service? What would be that market? B2C, B2B, geographically, Ho Chi Minh City or wider in Vietnam? You can ask yourself a lot of questions in terms of market. But if you don't mind, I would like to do a little bit of teaching here, and I hope it will not take more than a few minutes to explain what is a market type. I've been talking about that with my student from this book for the last 12 years. It's written by Steve Blank, and it's called The 4 Steps to the Epiphany. And he's explaining so well what market type is, and throughout my experience, I've seen that it's so important. In short, you have 4 market types: what is called existing market, what is called new market, what is called resegmented niche market, and what is called resegmented low-cost market. So quickly, what is an existing market? For example, I want to start tomorrow a co-working space in Saigon. I come with 1 more co-working space. It's an existing market. I will try to be better or cheaper or communicate better, but still I have competitors and they do something quite similar to me. If I want to be successful, I need to prove that I bring something that the others are not bringing. This is one type of marketing. This is one type of funding, because you need to do a certain range of efforts. The second type is completely different. It's the new market. Here, I will take as an example VinFast when they arrived in Vietnam, let's say 2 years ago, with the electric scooter. Okay, I know there was electric scooter before, but basically, VinFast has to educate the market with their new product. That takes a lot of efforts that are not much about saying my product or my service is better, but it's more about saying, educating the market that it's good, it's smart, it's efficient to use my product or my service. The third one, let's go back to the co-working. It's called resegmented niche. Imagine I want to launch something that is not a co-working space, but a sharing of training room, of education room. That is what I call a resegmented niche. It's an office space that you share, but not for people to work, for people to have meetings, for people to have trainings. That is a resegmented niche. And from that, you have reduced dramatically the competition. By the way, there is a company doing that in Saigon called Think, and they understood that perfectly. The fourth one is very easy to give an example, is the resegmented low cost. If you are in that type of market, you reduce dramatically the competition by being a much lower cost than the competition. And here I'm thinking of Vietjet when they entered the market, I don't remember, 6 or 7 years ago. Okay, so a few minutes to tell you that identifying in which market type you are is really critical before launching your business. It has a huge impact on the funding, because if you need to educate the market, it takes much more time than if you have to fight head-on with competitors. It takes more time, but not necessarily more money, but you have to take into account that time. In terms of pricing, if you go head-to-head with competitors, you don't have to define a new pricing. You just have to adjust to the existing one. If you go to a new market, there is the whole effort of defining at what price you're going to sell your services. In terms of marketing, on one side, you have to educate the market. Why would you use my product? While in an existing market, you have to convince to use your product or services rather than another one. So completely different approach depending on which market type you are in. So it's a very important question to ask yourself when you start a business.
A big question for us at this period of time is that can we get revenue? Can we get paid from our idea? Do you think we can survive with get paid from the idea?
Yes, of course, it goes a little bit with what we discussed before. If you ask yourself the question, will my customer use it if it's free? Then there is a very logical step is to ask yourself how much they would be ready to pay, right? Let's remind ourselves, we are at the very beginning of a startup. We are at the ID stage. So you don't need to be right. You don't need to be correct with your pricing at this stage. You just have to make sure that the price at which you think you could sell your products makes sense for you economically. If you have done the homework of deciding in which, or identifying in which market type you are, it makes it a little bit easier. For example, if you are in an existing market, your pricing will be relatively dictated by comparing, by benchmarking with the other players. Right? If one of your strategies is to be lower price, then you know you have to be lower than the existing one. If your strategy is to be better, then you know that you may be a higher price because you have some very good specificity. So existing market is relatively simple. You benchmark yourself with others. The other spectrum, if you are in a completely new market, it's much more difficult to identify early on the new pricing. You can have a vague idea because you know that if you will have adoption for your product or services, it means that your customer find value in what you offer. And you have to try to quantify that value. So by doing that exercise, for example, they will use my software, so they save 3 hours of work, okay, per day or per month. Then you can already build a certain estimate of the value. In that case, more often, you will have to wait. The next step, we're going to talk about it in a few minutes, is when you validate the product and the pricing with customers. But that is the next stage.
Yeah. What do you like?
And Professor Haroon, properly, it's also beside that, also depend on the, what I think that probably depend on the target audience or the segmentation that you want to target. Because beside the value of the product, sometimes the hygiene factor, the emotional aspect of the product also very important. Our product, we have the idea, and then we know what is the value proposition we can provide to the market, and then we can capture that idea. But beside the hygiene factor, we capture the value from the idea. Also depend on the segment we focus, and also the positioning we want to position as well. So I see that many stories that people are able to generate revenue and capture the value much higher than that.
So a very big question about team and the people. So most of our participants of today and also our Solvay alumni and students, when they talk about startup or their failure or their success, one of the top 3 elements is about people. And can you share your experience and your advice on the characteristic of the founders, co-founders, and how can we team up? How can we drive the team? And how many team can we have? I'm sure that you have a lot of experience.
Yuki, we can do a session on that if you want, and then I can share experience for a very long time, right? So it's I would say something that we maybe we don't mention enough. I don't hear it enough, and it's not easy because often startups are young. Is know yourself a bit, right? When you are a founder, maybe the beginning is to do a self-assessment. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Right? Because we are not good at everything, and we often, at the beginning of our career, we don't know where we are good at. I give you a very personal example. At the beginning, for our first large startup we started in Belgium in 2000 called 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐬, I thought I was good at numbers, so I would be CFO, right? And I had other co-founders who did other parts. And I was a good CFO, no problem. But later on, I discovered that I wasn't bad in sales. And for the second startup, I took over not only the finance, but also the sales. It's just, if you had asked me at the first startup, what do you want to do? I would have never said sales. Okay, so it's not only easy to know yourself, but it's extremely important. Why? Because you need to create a team. So at that stage of the beginning of a startup, you don't need a full team, but you should already know what are the key strengths that are needed to develop that project and what are the key strengths that you miss. And the one that you miss, you need co-founders. And if you miss them badly, either because you are very weak or because it's very important for your startup, then you better be extremely generous in terms of shareholding with your co-founders.
Absolutely right, Professor Harold. We need to know how we strengthen and what we need. For me, I see additional with some other thing that I see that beside and the partner that we need, beside the skill that can complement our weakness, they have to be passionate with the idea and really share the common vision, how to drive the business forward. Because at the beginning, we start up, of course, this is the vision, this is the plan, but many things, uncertainty happening. And if we don't have that kind of energy, that engagement, sometimes easy to give up. And that is, this is the real experience that I also face. Second thing that the people, the component go get along with us, had to be commitment, had to be commit, had to be willing to fight each other to overcome a lot of challenge, a lot of issue that we need to shape the plan, we need to adjust along the way. And as the founder, I think that for me, the most important at the beginning is that try to meet as much as stakeholder, as much as client as possible, to really shape, to really evaluate and assess on the idea whether there is the real market and how the potential of the market. So those kind of focus, those kind of the time to spend for the founder, very important. So from my view, beside that, we really need some people that very useful when we run the startup. How we can say something like the administration support that help to map and coordinate different partner, different founder, so that it make you more, because every people only have 8 hours per day. So those kind of additional resources at the beginning, not cost so much as well, but really helpful to provide more energy, more time for every founder so that they can focus on their particular area. For example, some years ago, I and 2 other friends, one foreigner, one local, a lady, 2 ladies, 1 man. And then we think about, we build something in the training and consultant environment. We had a very good idea in terms of online training, focusing on the B2B environment, because we know that many companies, they really need the systematic way train the people, not necessarily getting out of the work and then join the offline training. And we set up a team as a team. As people, very cheap product, is very strong into the product. And I myself try to inject some communication outside stakeholder, and we have the financial people. But because we all have something busy, we're not 100% focused, and we don't have the people who try to help us on the ground to coordinate, to plan, to make sure those happen. So it's really difficult and disaster at the beginning. So those kind of experience, if we think valuable, we put it right up front. So it saves a lot of time for us to move further in the better way. Otherwise, sometimes, and reduce a lot of conflict, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of lose focus for the key member, the founder. Those are something that I think valuable to share. But absolutely, we need to know where we are strength and what we need to support.
So start with knowing who we are and where we are, and then to work together. So we got a few questions here. So Aro and Anh Hùng, would you like to answer one of the question or a few questions now? Because I see that some question quite could be answered in the later, but one or two of them maybe can be answered now.
So I will take them. There is a nice question on a Tesla strategy. Carsten, I think I have to relay with what I said about the market type again. If you are in a new market like Tesla was, indeed, you can go for high price. You can, I mean, that's part of the strategic thinking, but yes, you can go for high price when you are in a new market, because it's not easy for the buyers to benchmark you with others. So the answer would be, if you are in a new market, you have a good chance to go to high price. If you allow me, I will tell you that from my experience, we missed it when we created a company 𝗕𝗿𝐺 13 years ago. We were certainly in a resegmented market, if not in a new market, and we didn't fix the price high enough, and that's one of the mistakes we did. Of course, everything ended well, and thanks to that, we had a huge market share, and we found a good buyer for a company after 13 years. So everything looks very nice. But what did the buyer did as soon as they had bought our company? They increased the price by 50% because they knew they could do it, right? And we could have done it, right? So not choosing the right price from the very beginning can have, I'm not saying negative consequence, but it can have a lot of consequences. So yes, for the Tesla strategy, if you are in a new market, if you set up a tech startup and you are in Vietnam, I'm looking at both aspects, tech startup and you are in Vietnam, you know that Vietnam is a huge pool of tech specialists for the world. So I would say that no doubt in such a case, you build an in-house tech team, because whether short-term or long-term, it will be a huge advantage to have a team. Right? I'm not sure I'm telling the same to my friends in Belgium, because when you are in Belgium, putting together a tech team internally, it's something I have done for each of my startups, but it's so expensive. Right? So then we come to raising funds and so on. But in Vietnam, with the large pool of perfectly trained tech people available, I would definitely go to building that as an advantage of having my internal tech team. It gives much more flexibility. And if we have time, we're going to talk about pivot, the ability to change your business model if you need to. And I think that would help a lot.
Yes, in Vietnam, I also know some very good guy in terms of software development, IT as well. And beside the in-house, yes, of course, the cost and benefit and huge investment. Also think about the partner or outsourcing. But beside that, we need to do something to really because this is one of the core competency for the idea, the business idea, but also for the future as well. So how to ensure uh, the engagement, the quality of those kind of key competency. If we use somebody outside, we need to build up some probably like profit sharing or something to ensure that people really devote, really get along with the business idea we want to build up. Otherwise, we cannot control 100% on the key competency to grow the business.
Yeah.
But many talent, many good people outside Vietnam, because I still remember when I run the software company, and then talking about we need to develop some security software, and then the group they're looking for different area, come from India, China, Israel, Czech Republic, everything, and finally Vietnam team we beat with the group and we win the deal. It means that proving that Vietnam have many talent in the IT and software environment. And recently, the new generation, the English skill, that's one of the constraints in the past, improves a lot now. Many young people speak English well, and many tools to work remotely as well.
But what is a startup? Why we don't call it a company? The key word in the definition of a startup is scalability. Right? You have a business model, you have a project that can get scale, that can grow. It's not only a question of speed, but it can grow relatively big, right? And as soon as you can prove that there is a potential for scale, it's much easier to attract investors. And scale is very important. If you set up a restaurant, right? Many people will say it's not a startup. But if you set up a restaurant with a team in terms of marketing or whatever that is driven for growth, where you can multiply it, then people will call your restaurant a startup. And they're right. Right? I give you another example. If you have developed in Vietnam, and that's very popular now for very good reason, an offshore IT company. I would call it like a consulting company. I would call it a company, not a startup in general. But if within your pool of IT skills, you take the time to you decide to take 20% of that time to develop an in-house software that can help the same clients with their duties, then there is a very beautiful opening for scale, right? And immediately that becomes what is called a startup. But startup is related to scale, and if it's related to scale, you can attract investors. That's the chicken and egg.
We got a few questions from friends here. So the first question already answered partly in the sharing of arrow. So the question is, what is the differences between a startup and a social enterprise? And Arrow just talk about the difference between a startup and a business. So would you like to talk more about the difference?
I'm not sure there is not always a difference. If you look at the definition I gave of startup, that is scale, you can certainly put scale in a social enterprise, right? In my perspective, a social enterprise, besides profit, they also want to maximize benefits for the society and the environment. And if there is, and when there is profit, and hopefully there is, the profit are mostly used to fund these social programs. Okay, that is my vision of a social enterprise. If we talk like this, then social enterprise can be a startup, no problem. And now the new thing with social enterprise startup type, so scalable, is that there are funds, there is money called impact fund, who are trying to target those type of enterprise to finance them. That is something that has happened 2, 3, 4 years ago, that is new. And so yes, a social enterprise can be a startup and can be funded in the same format as a startup while keeping its integrity of a social enterprise. I would like to add that the difference between social enterprise and enterprise in many aspects will be more and more blurred. There will be less and less difference because of the ESG and the impact approach and the environment. There will be more and more cooperation. There will be more and more link between what used to be called social enterprise and pure profit companies.
I will finish today's session with asking you two, Aro and Home, could you give us some advice, something that we can take away from this session? We discussed a lot and we learned a lot. And if you can say something briefly.
What I would say 3 elements, right? So people can maybe remember them. One is very simple, client first. Right? I hear so many, I explained that in details. We hear a lot of Me Too story, right? People say, oh, this happened in the US, I will do it in Vietnam. Okay, good. Do you have a potential client in Vietnam for your product or service? Client first. And I'm including here satisfaction also. We didn't talk about it, but it's more and more crucial. I repeat, client first. Second, I would say keep dry powder. Okay, it's also something I have mentioned. So many things unexpected coming in the life of a startup. Keep dry powder. It's in terms of energy, in terms of motivation, and in terms of money. Don't let yourself be exhausted in any way. And for that, and I come back to the discussion we had earlier, it's so crucial to have a beautiful team so you can cheer up each other along the way. And the last one is, I would say very simply, no team, no leader, right? A lot of people I hear can have a motivation like, I want to be a CEO, right? So I want to be a CEO, so I create a startup. Let's not talk about the I want to be rich, right? Let's focus on I want to be a CEO, so I create my startup. If you just want to have a title of a CEO, fine. But what is a CEO if you have no team, right? So always keep in mind to create that team that will drive the success of your startup. And as a consequence, yes, you happen to be a CEO, and you have to be a good CEO. But no team, no leader.
And then for me, I can say just additional one more point. And finally, you as a founder at the startup, you need to take care of yourself. You need to discuss your spouse, your colleague. You need to ensure the work-life balance, because the road is not full of the roads. Huh? So many challenging, but of course, if you manage well, ensure some of the key things that like Professor Harold sharing, also ensure you're healthy, so you have energy, you keep moving the ball. And when the ball start moving, everything will be in good shape. And that period, very important. You need to care for yourself, and wish every people will be studying the ball and achieve the dream for startup.
And thank you everyone for spending time with us today. And yes, please take good care of yourself first, as the advice, the very last sentence of anh Hùng. And we wish all of you success, health, and happiness